Let's start today with a story. Back in 1966, a very small car company very few people had ever heard of from a land far, far away came up with a subcompact car. They gave it a very strange name, which I will share with you later on in the story. It took them 17 years to sell 10 million copies, and by that point, there were a couple of cool derivations, one with a hatchback and a manual transmission that was sporty, that was codenamed 86. So they celebrated the year later in 1984 by moving it from rear drive to front wheel drive. Odd way to celebrate. Then 9 years later, they moved it from subcompact upmarket to compact. Now fast forward to today, and we are in the 12th generation of what that former small company, now Toyota, calls the Corolla. If you're doing the math on that, that's only 3 years less than the 911 has been around. So let's drive the 12th generation of Corolla on a racetrack nobody has ever heard of. There are two unusual things for a compact car going on underneath the hood of the 12th gen Corolla. Number one, there are two engines on offer, and number two, neither of them have a turbo. So there's the basic engine, which is the 1.8 four-cylinder fuel-injected engine, 16 valve with what they call Valvematic. That one's good for 139 horsepower, comes in at 6,100 RPM, 126 pounds of torque. That comes in at 3,900 RPM. Then there's this engine, 2-liter, 4-cylinder, direct fuel injection. This one's good for 169 horsepower. That comes in at 6,600 RPM and 151 pounds of torque, which comes in at a rather aggressive 4,400 RPM. Something incredibly important to note about the choice of engine here, meaning not doing a smaller turbocharged engine, it's the personality of the engine that changes, the way in which it delivers power. This, frankly, is something I prefer more over a stressed turbocharger like a 1.6, because if you're really being honest with yourself, this is a vehicle people use on a daily basis, not a stoplight Grand Prix, or most people will not have their own racetrack across the river from Savannah. Platforms. You and I have discussed this topic ad nauseum on the show before with Porsches, Volkswagens, even Rolls-Royces. Here is really no different because we have discussed many times the Toyota New Global Architecture, TNGA, which underpinned many cars, like that Corolla hatchback we drove a couple of months ago. Well, the dirty secret no one tells you is this, that Corolla hatchback and the Lexus UX we drove up in Seattle. That is all based on the same platform, the TNGA-C. I'm gathering the C is for compact. So what underpins this platform? Well, a couple of things. It's McPherson struts with a stabilizer bar in the front, multi-link unit in the rear, 10.2-inch diameter rotors in the back, 10.8-inch diameter rotors in the front. Then there are the wheels. There are three sizes on offer depending on the trim level and the propulsion system, 15s, 16s, and 18s. And then there's the weight. It ranges anywhere from 2,910 pounds all the way up to 3,150 pounds. Short of GTIs or other compact cars that are fitted with a similar suspension system in the back, this is usually an area where these kind of cars come up short. Right, they're not designed for tracks like this, but there's a nice, like, two turns right on top of each other. This will give us a good understanding of driving dynamics. Push it a little harder here, and just so you understand the speed limit on this track, yes, there is a speed limit on this track, 35 miles an hour, and they don't want me to take the apex. But the thing you notice is, while there is composure, because of the quality of the hardware underneath the Corolla, there is still some lean. It's not dialed into the point where you're going to have flat cornering going around a turn like this. And this is not something people that are going to drive Corollas are really going to focus on. But where this pays dividends, meaning having the multi-link unit in the back, not so much the struts in the front, is around town. Drove this on some of the cobblestone streets of Savannah, and it is, I think supple is the best way to describe it. It is a compact car, which has now become, at least what I've seen in bigger cities, is now like the new mid-size car. And it has the feeling of a car that has a longer wheelbase, and that is all attributed to the choice of hardware rather than the size of the car. we need to take a break from driving to discuss the interior. Because I think all of us have had experience with Corollas. I know I've had friends, family that had Corollas, and I don't think of them as fancy. And yes, we did discuss the interior of the 12th generation Corolla in the Corolla Hatchback Tech Review. You can click on the link up here to check that out. This is the same design, the same tactile feel, all that stuff. But I saw this one off to the side, and it's not the car we're driving, but look at the color and trim of this one. It's got a two-tone tan and like a mocha interior with contrast stitch on the top of the dash, the door panels, and it's repeated on the console, especially the two-tone theme. And this one even has heated seats and a powered driver's seat. So 2 transmissions on offer. You will not be surprised to learn the one that will be sold in volume is a CVT. And like we've seen in a number of other cars these days with CVTs, is there's a real gear for a first gear. My guess is that is more for functionality around town. So let's try this. Think of this as an intersection. We're coming to a stop. Bring it to 0. And not digging so deep, but there is a sharpness off the line with the CVT in the Corolla. Then you get into the mid-range here, and it's absolutely CVT. Is it a problem for car guys and gals like you and I? Yes. Most people who will buy this will not even notice. That's why you and I need to put a pin in this part of the discussion and come back to it later in the episode. You and I have been hearing all too often that the sky is falling and everybody's rushing out of sedans and getting into SUVs and crossovers, and Ford, Chrysler, even GM. They're out of the car business. But then we're scratching our head and we're looking at Hyundai, Kia, and Toyota that stays in the car business. So did a little research, and it turns out the sky ain't falling so much. There are 5.3 million annual sales of sedans still in the US. That's even after the sky has fallen in the sedan world. So I gotta believe that's gonna make for a really good day for the companies that have bought the insurance policy of still making sedans. Am I the only one that thinks that? Weigh in the comments below. Blue car in front of us, that's the hatchback we drove in San Diego. Basis of comparison, that is only about an inch shorter in length than this. So not a huge difference, but there is a difference. I'm sorry, I have yet to discuss some rather important numbers that have an impact on one of the reasons for being of a Corolla, and that would be the dimensions. So it is 106.3 for the wheelbase, 182.3 for the overall length. That combined with the 2 different engines on offer as well as the transmissions, it ranges in MPG. So it's 29, 36, 34 combined for the one that you and I would want, which is the manual transmission. Then the best derivation with the CVT, that one is 31, 40, 34 combined. So a bit behind the scenes here as we come to the public portion of the track. Toyota closed down this whole area here, and to do that, they brought in the local constable, which you can't see right here. But what's interesting, I was talking with the chief engineer, Udaya. The guy is super cool. He's got some great background in some sports cars. And he was telling me about all the safety stuff, and I don't want to bore you with safety stuff. However, while we have the Polizei here, it is good to point out as part of the safety stuff, this is actually fitted with a tracker. Like all Corollas are fitted with trackers as standard. And it kind of goes back to the history of Corollas in that they, at one point, were like the most stolen cars, at least where I grew up in New York City. So it's interesting. Now we fast forward, this thing is over 50 years old, and now they're all fitted with some sort of stolen recovery system as part of a safety technology or a suite of safety technologies. You and I have driven a lot of compact cars together in our time, and we always come to that point where, oh great, there's a manual transmission on offer, but it's only in the crappy model, the one you're never gonna buy. You can't get anything in it. It's ugly, it has the small wheels, and as a result, it never sells well. But you and I still piss and moan about it. Apparently somebody's listening, because there's a manual transmission on offer, but Toyota decided we're going to offer it in a better model, not the crappy one. It's in the SE with the 18-inch wheels, the push-button start. You can get it with a sunroof. You can get it with a fancier-looking interior. And apparently that strategy is paying off, because in the hatchback version of this generation of Corolla, the take rate for the manual transmission, are you ready for this? 10%. The only thing more than that is the 911, which 100 grand, 20%. So apparently our complaining is working. I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. Don't really expect to do that in Corollas, but my God, is it a welcome change. So the other transmission on offer, and the big thing you notice is very tall, the actual shifter itself. Not exactly tightly spaced like a Miata, but I am still very thankful to have it here. The thing you notice is it's actually a nice transmission, works well with this engine in terms of the personality, is well suited for the car. Come around some of these turns a bit more, and granted, maybe it's just me that I like to push a car a bit harder with the manual transmission. There's a bit of a breakdown in the front with the struts, and we learned this in the Corolla hatchback, that there was more composure in the rear. I feel like they put some more time to tune the rear. Maybe the suggestion here is to take the same learning from the back, apply it to the front, at least in the manual transmission setup, and it would be a beautifully balanced car, at least for the segment. You remember back in 2011 when the then new Hyundai Elantra came out? It ate the lunch of the Honda and the Toyota, anything in the compact segment. And it looked for a bit there that they just weren't competitive, the Toyotas and Hondas, even like the Chevys and the Fords, because the upstarts, the Hyundais and Kias of the world, were just, it wasn't just a matter of, they gave you more, yeah, for your money. They started to drive better in like 2015, 2016. But apparently things have come full circle, because now we've driven the hatchback version of the Corolla a couple months ago, and now this sedan, and there's no other way to put this. It's Toyota, man. They got unlimited resources that they can throw at anything they want, and they chose to throw a lot of money at a compact segment car to the point where it has a world-class rear suspension, and it makes the quality of the ride better than most out there. Is it as good as a Mazda? No, but it's above a lot of other things out there. And now it's back in the hunt of the compact segment, or so says Caesar. So that's about it here from Claremont, Ontario, Canada. These guys want to go outside, so I'm going to take them for a nice walk in the snow, even though I'm going to freeze my butt off. But can you say no to that? Apparently not. Someone wants a Betty run. So you know what, let me know in the comments below or via social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Do you feel Toyota's competitive again in this segment? Or are the three of us crazy? Till we see you next time, bis später. Before you and I give this car back, a little bit behind the scenes here, let's just say that if you drive more than 7 miles an hour, you're driving too fast in and around Savannah, Georgia. Basically, they like to drive backwards here. So I've got a chaperone in the back. His name is Max. You don't see him. So we're going to do something to piss off Max. Do it the right way this time. Max ain't happy.